Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. So if you guys are new here, my name is Amelia and here on my channel I talk a lot about spirituality, tarot, a lot of tarot to be honest. So today I wanted to do a tarot tag because it's been a while since I've done one and I'm actually really picky about tarot tags, but this one really caught my eye and I thought it would be perfect for me. I think I've only done like one or two tarot tags if I had to guess. I don't really know why I'm picky about it, but I am. I think I'm just a picky person. Now, I'm also not on screen today, and that is just because I look a hot mess, and I've actually already filmed this video one other time, and it was messed up, we'll just put it that way, so this is my second shot at it, but I think it'll be good. So, the tarot tag that I want to talk about today is called #TarotOfException. The idea behind this tag is that you showcase decks that are your exceptions. So, like, you have certain rules or certain things that you look for in a tarot deck, and you're like, oh, I would never have XYZ thing in a tarot deck, but then you end up with a tarot deck that has that XYZ thing, whatever it may be. And so that deck becomes your exception. Like, oh, I would never buy a deck that had super bold, bright colors or something. And then you end up with one and you actually love it. And so that becomes your exception to the rule. So that's kind of what this tag's all about, and that's what I'm going to do today. Now, this tag was actually created a year ago by Tara. I want to say that's how you pronounce her name. From Tara is Cozy. I can put a little picture up on the screen of her channel. But I actually saw the video on Lisa Pepez's channel and Danny Mystic's channel. So you guys can check them out too. But I actually saw the video there, like, first, and then after seeing it a few times, I was like, okay, this actually seems like a tag I would love. Even though I'm like a year late to the trend, it's okay. I thought this would be fun. Okay, so before we get into it, I do want to point out that I strongly advise against overconsumption and over-purchasing of tarot decks. I think that's one reason I've stepped back from tarot just a little bit, because I've hit this part in my collection where I feel like I have enough decks. Obviously, I'm still purchasing some, but I do not want to be someone who advocates for excessive consumption or consumerism, especially in the tarot community. I know I talk about it a lot on the channel. You guys can watch my hot takes or other videos about this. But I just wanted to put that out there, that even though I'm showing off a lot of decks, you do not need to have this many. You could have one, you could have two, you could have 100, honestly, if you want. But I personally try not to promote overconsumption or the need to buy more and more decks. It's just something that I try to be mindful of. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump into it for my first tarot exception, and that is that I do not like modern decks. I don't know what it is, but I hate modern decks. It's weird, because I've tried to wrap my head around this the last time I filmed this video, and I realized that I don't like, I know that I don't like modern decks. I don't like seeing cars on the chariot, or seeing motorcycles, seeing modern buildings, technology. Like, I do not want to see a cell phone in my deck. I do not want to see modern tech at all in my decks. I think it just pulls me out of it. Like, to me, tarot is very esoteric and spiritual, and I want nature, I want magic, I want fantasy, and to see modern elements in a deck, it often pulls me out of this fantastical spiritual world. That's not to say that you can't find spirituality at the grocery store or out in the modern world. Obviously, we can. I can feel spirituality now with a camera above me and a microphone off to the side. Like, I have text surrounding me, but I can still feel it. It's just different with tarot. I don't know why, but that's my rule. I don't like modern stuff in tarot decks. Looking at the Modern Witch Tarot here, I don't actually have that deck, but that deck just drives me nuts. I do not like it. However, my exception to the modern deck rule is the deck of Luminaries Tarot. This is by Lumaine, and I love this. It's an indie deck, and I purchased it pretty much as soon as I could. It's beautiful. Now, you can see that mine's a little beat up. I will say that the cardstock isn't the most durable, but I don't even care because I love it. It's so flexible, and it's like this nice linen texture. Very, like, easy to shuffle. I really like it. But you can see it's very modern. Like, there's street lamps, an aquarium. Some of mine are going to be upside down. I'm going to pass those by. There's a record player there. This one's at a carnival. So you can see there's a lot of, like, modern things in this deck. There's some tech in it. There is it's very much city life. Like, this deck is city life, and I think what I like about it is that despite it being modern, despite it being set in the present day, I love the artwork, and the characters feel very real to me. Like, I feel like I'm walking through the city, and I'm kind of seeing all these people for who they are, and, you know, what they represent in this card's meaning. And also, I feel like this deck challenges me to go through my own life every day and look for spirituality and look for, like, just that connection to the divine in everyday things. Now, I'll admit, I do not like the car as the chariot. I really don't. It's so cliche to me. I'll forgive it because I like the rest of the deck. You know, I like the vending machine as the Seven of Cups. Like, that, having a lot of options. Maybe you only have so much money for the vending machine. Totally resonates. I feel that. I really do like how this brings you to kind of, like, question... And this brings you to kind of, like, look at the world in a different way, and view the world as a more spiritual place despite it being modern. And maybe all modern decks do that, but I just like this one. I think it's mainly due to the color palette, to be honest, and the style of the art. The digital art with these characters is so cool. The colors are gorgeous. The texture of the cards, like, everything about it just feels really nice and luxurious. And so I think it's honestly just down to the feeling of the cards themselves, the color palette, and the characters, and otherwise I wouldn't really have chosen this deck, but I was captivated by the art. I really, really was. But normally, I don't like modern decks, I don't like modern depictions, but I do think that this deck has me appreciating modern elements in tarot more than I usually do. Okay, I want to keep this video kind of short and sweet if I can. It's probably going to be 30 minutes, I really hope it's not, but we'll see. So the next tarot exception that I have. So I do not like collage decks. It's weird to say that I don't like collage decks, but it's really just the art itself. Like, the art of a collage deck, I just do not like. I love junk journaling. I'm a junk journaler. I love doing that stuff, but I don't like it in tarot. And I think the main reason is that collage decks, in my opinion, and this is wholly my opinion, I know there's a lot of people that are going to disagree with me, I don't view collage decks as my version of art. I know that's crazy, but, like, when I see art is subjective, and for me personally, I don't find it very artistic and tasteful to have a collage deck. But I know people love collage decks. I know Rebecca Campbell's decks are, like, hot items, and I know that collage decks are super, super, super trendy, or at least they were, like, in the past couple years. But I personally don't like them. I think it's because they're too cluttered. They feel kind of like scrapped together, like somebody was just rummaging and trying to crank out a quick deck. Like, it feels like a cash grab to me. Most of the collage decks feel like cash grabs to me. They feel like there hasn't been a lot of thought put into them. They feel very, like, cluttered, and usually it's just too much to look at for me. So I don't like collage decks, but again, that's my personal opinion. However, of course, this video is about exceptions, so I do have exceptions. I actually have two. So I'm going to show you my exceptions to this rule. Of course, my beloved Crow Tarot by MJ Cullinane. I love this deck, and I know if you guys have been on my channel, you know, before, you've seen that this deck is, like, my saving grace, my holy grail, you know? It's my favorite deck. So here are the backs, sweet and simple, and then the front. So I think what I like about it is that even though it's a collage deck, there's, like, this painted or artistic, like, doodly element, I guess, to the backs. Like, in the background, you can see it in, like, this card, for example. Again, it's still a collage deck, but it feels more artistic to me, more my version of art. Again, art is subjective, but I just think this feels more what I am able to handle. I also love that it is very similar to the RWS depictions. That helps me a lot. But it does stray, you know, and does its own thing, which I can appreciate. But what I also really like about it is that it's a very muted color palette. The cards have these, like, nice little papery color on the borders, but the color palette itself isn't overly out there. It's not in your face. You don't feel like you're looking at a hodgepodge, like, mess. you know? And, like, yes, some cards are brighter than others, but it's not, like, so overwhelming that you just can't discern the card's meaning. So I think with the Crow Tarot, the reason that I like this deck as a collage deck is because it's easy to read, honestly. It's just so easy, very RWS based, very, like, simple, not overly, like, messy and chaotic. And I don't know. I don't even know why this deck speaks so deeply to me, but it's a heavy hitter, and it's one that I come back to time and time again. It's a very easy to read, easy to understand deck. We speak the same language, and I think that even though it's a collage deck, that those, like, painted artistic elements help me to not feel like it's a collage deck. It helps me to appreciate it more because it's more my style of art. In the same vein, I want to talk about the Wild Unknown Archetypes by Kim Kranz. Now, this deck has a lot of packaging. I don't know where the sleeve for this went. I've had this deck for quite some time. Also, the camera's going to shake because this thing is hefty. The guidebook is massive. It's huge. And honestly, I would not use this deck without the guidebook, I don't think. It's also just, like I said, packaging is insane. I feel like I'm opening one of those Russian dolls. The backs are not my favorite. They're kind of grainy. They're this weird diamond. I don't love them. I do love that the deck is a circle, but the cardstock is very stiff and hard to shuffle. This is this is obviously a collage deck, and it is so not my style. Not even close. But I think I can appreciate it because there's, like, this watercolor in it. There's this, like, pointillism. There's line work, and I think I can appreciate those things, and so it helps on some of the cards, but there's plenty of cards I don't like. I love the back of this. I don't like whatever is happening here. I like this card a lot, though, because most of it's drawn. There's just a couple things that feel cut out. So I really don't like collage decks in general, but I give this one a pass. Not so much because of the art depictions on it, but actually because of the archetypes themselves. This is my only archetypes deck, and I'm obsessed with it. It is such an incredible reader, and that guidebook really, really, really makes this deck. Like, I don't have another archetypes deck, but this one, it's wonderful. This is my shadow work deck. This is one I come back to a lot. This depiction I really like. I love certain cards. I hate other cards, but honestly, I move past the art, and I come to the guidebook, and I come to the word itself and what that means to me. And that's where the power of this deck lays. So it's not so much the art itself, though I know a lot of people do like it. It's just not my thing, to be honest. Now, there's one card I always point out because I hate it, which is, I'm going to see if I can find it. I have no reason to go searching for this card and waste my time, but I hate this one. I thought I should point that out, but this is, like, one I do not like. I've heard a lot of people say they don't like it, so that's fair. I'm not the only one. I don't want to remove it from the deck because I do want this archetype to remain in the deck, but I think it's important to point out. Like, this is what I mean about, like, collage decks not being my vibe. They feel low effort. This card feels low effort compared to, like, something like this, or even something like this. Like, I don't know. The other ones feel more well thought out. Even the ones that are more collage-y that I don't normally like, I feel like they have more symbolism, like this one. And that one just feels like it was an afterthought, and also I just think it's ugly. So, sorry Kim Kranz, but that's my opinion. I still love this deck. I recommend it for people, and I really do love how deep and esoteric it can get. Alright, next up in my Tarot of Exceptions, things that I do not like in tarot decks, and this one I'm going to kind of lump together because I don't really have either or in a way, and it's that I don't like minimalist or pip style decks. I find them to, again, be very low effort. I think they're kind of silly. I'm thinking of, like, the Villains Tarot, the Disney Villains Tarot. I gave that to a friend of mine, but I didn't know it was a pip deck, and I just feel like the pips are just lackluster, and I feel like it's like somebody puts so much effort into the majors, and then the minors feel forgotten, and it also makes it a lot more difficult to read the minors. Now, I only have 2 decks that kind of fit this way, but one of them is a classic Tarot de Marseille deck, and that deck I only use for study, so I'm not going to show it on screen, but it's a pip deck because it's the classic, Tarot de Marseille. But this one that I want to show you is actually a minimalist and about as pippy as I'm willing to get when it comes to decks. So this is the Arcana Iris Sakura Tarot by Tina Gong. This is also an indie deck, and I really do love the packaging. Like, I think indie creators, they are incredible with their packaging and the branding and all of that. So, it's beautiful. It was my first gilded deck. It has gorgeous backs. It's beautiful. And then the color palette is very, like, smooth and simple. And I think there are some elements that I would not have purchased this deck if it didn't have certain elements I'm about to go through. So we'll show this minor here. So this is the 9 of Discs, and you can see this. Is this the Tree of Life? I want to say it is. I genuinely don't know. As much as I study esotericism, I will be honest, I get mixed up as well. But what I love about it is there's an astrological symbol, a planetary symbol, and a keyword on the card. Not to mention the fact that there is always some sort of, like, esoteric pattern or imagery. Like, there's a lotus on this one. Like, I think that the esoteric imagery and the element, like the elemental things in it, help you to understand what the card is about. So, for 9 of Discs, we have gain. Okay, not necessarily the keyword I would use, but it does make me think about the card different. I use this as a study deck. I love that it's tied to Virgo, it's tied to Venus. Like, that's very interesting, and it really helps me to better understand the card and to understand its connection to something greater than just tarot. Now, this deck is a Thoth-based deck, so it is a little bit more difficult for me to read, but I do love these majors. I think the majors are really, really well done. The majors just feel so incredible. They look stunning. I think this deck is honestly just gorgeous. And I actually don't mind the simplicity, the minimalism of it, even though it's generally not my style. One other thing I wanted to point out is that even the quartz have a couple elements. So this is the Prince of Swords, which would be the Knight of Swords, and that's Heir of Air. That one's probably not the best example because it has air twice, but okay. How about this? The Prince of Chalices, so the Knight of Cups, Heir of Water, because knights represent air, swords are air, chalices are water. Again, I think this deck does something absolutely incredible with its symbolism, with the keywords, with the elemental associations, and so that's why I like it. But generally, I do not like pip decks, I do not like minimalist decks, but this one gets a pass. So in the same vein of, like, minimalist decks that feel like they're not well thought out, and I don't think Labyrinthos is the company that Tina Gong has, so the Arcana Iris Sakura deck does not feel low effort to me at all. Even though it's minimal, even though it's pippish, it does not feel low effort because of all the symbolism and like the well thought through patterns and the elemental associations. It doesn't feel low effort, but some of them do. And so I'm trying to explain how my next Tarot of Exception also feels very low effort to me, and that is why I don't like it. And the rule that I go by is I do not like RWS clones. I have never purchased an RWS clone for myself. I will explain where both these decks came from and why I have them. I don't want to say never, but you should never say never. But in truth, I can't visualize myself buying an RWS clone. If I want an RWS, I will buy an RWS. So I have a classic RWS that's pretty bold colored, and I have a muted one that's the Centennial 10 edition of the classic RWS, and those two, while they are both RWS decks, one's more muted, one's more bold in color, I have different purposes for them. One's a travel deck, one's my regular, but I do not and cannot see myself purchasing an RWS clone ever, but I have two. And so I don't want to call these exceptions because, to be honest, I don't love them, but I'll show them off anyway, because I do have them in my collection, and I haven't given them up. So I have the gold foil tarot. This one, I don't even know if it was just, like, made by some company that might have stolen the idea. I have no idea, to be honest. This was a gift from a friend of mine, and it's gonna be hard to show on camera, but it has like these black edges, it has this gold and black color palette. The cards feel like plastic in a weird way, but it has like, it's gold foil. I mean, it is exactly what it says, and it's the RWS. It's a bit more minimal than the classic RWS because otherwise it'd be too crazy and you wouldn't be able to know what the heck was going on in the card. But, oh my gosh, why do I have so many majors here? Like here, there's no like background really for this card, but that way you can, actually see what's going on. But yeah, just classic RWS. I wouldn't say there's anything crazy in particular about it. But yeah, there's nothing to say. It's literally just an RWS clone, and I'm not a fan of RWS clones. Now, have I used this deck? Yes. Have I enjoyed this deck? Yes, honestly, I have. I've enjoyed reading with it. It definitely has its own energy and such, but I am not a fan of RWS clones. And so I can't say that it's like an exception, except for the fact that I've kept it and I have used it. I do like that it's black and gold, but I don't have much to say on it, and I feel bad, but I really don't like RWS clones. Another RWS clone that I have is in this bag. It was gifted to me by a friend, and I have yet to actually use this deck, but it is an RWS clone. It has these pink backs. It kind of matches my shirt. And again, it's just the RWS imagery. Again, very plasticky, laminated, glossy cards. And it has the traditional RWS imagery, just washed in pink. That's it. That's the card. And so some people might like these, but I am very much against them, in all honesty. I don't like these kinds, but I took this deck because a friend was rehoming it, and I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't ask her about the deck, she just kind of gave it to me. So, yeah. Again, not much to say on it, not a fan, but it is in my collection now, so I have it. But I haven't actually read with this one, and I can't see myself purchasing decks like this at all. Alright, so for my next Tarot of Exception, one rule that I have, and it's not really a hard, fast rule, to be honest. It's just that I don't really like decks that rename the cards, specifically renaming the suits or renaming the major arcana. I usually don't like it, but the art almost always gets me. Now, one I was going to show, but for the sake of time I won't, is the Mystical Dream Tarot. It's a gorgeous deck. I'll put a couple pictures up on the screen, but it renames all of the courts and all of the majors. It makes it very difficult sometimes to know what the heck that card is supposed to be, especially because the imagery in that deck does not align to the traditional RWS depictions, and some of them just downright don't make any sense. I have shown that deck on my channel before, so I'm not going to show it again here, but that is one that comes to mind. Another one that comes to mind where they've renamed things, but this one would be my exception, is the Dungeons & Dragons Tarot. Here are the backs, that black and gold. I do like the black and gold colors, I have to be honest. But it renames all of the minors in, like, things that you'd find in, like, D&D. So we have strength, charisma, intelligence, and wisdom. And so it takes me a while to figure out which ones are which, but I'll try to lay them out. I know, so we have the 4 suits here. So we have strength, which is wands, charisma, which is pentacles, intelligence is swords, and wisdom is cups. These two and these two I always, like, mix up in my head, and I have to, like, see them. Like, if I see strength and intelligence, I'm like, wands, swords, because I know intelligence is going to be linked to swords. Same for these two. Charisma and wisdom both make me think of cups, but when I see them together, I'm like, yes, wisdom must be the cup one, charisma must be the pentacles one. But I have to think about it every time that I use this deck. I have to pull them all out, remember what they are, and think about it. But I do love the art. Put those down. I do genuinely just love the art in this deck. I think it's gorgeous, and honestly, I can get past the renaming once I remind myself what it's about. Once I remind myself what each suit is, it's not too bad. But generally, I try to avoid it. This one's always funny. I try to avoid these kinds of decks that rename them, just because it's a bit more effort. And I know that sounds lazy of me, and maybe it is, but it can make it a bit more difficult when I'm doing readings for others. And this deck in particular, again, because it doesn't follow the classic RWS, you already have to kind of put more effort into the imagery itself. So having the names mixed up can make it a little difficult, and I have misread cards because of that. But again, I do love the look of it. I use this deck on my altar. I use this deck for myself, for clients. Like, it's gorgeous. It's fantasy, and I love fantasy. This feels tarot to me. It feels esoteric. Love D&D. Love Baldur's Gate, you know? So I'm okay with it. But I would say it's an exception because I generally don't go for decks like that unless the art is overly appealing. And to be honest, this art was appealing. That's the reason I have it. But that's the only reason I go for decks that rename things, is because I love the art. And if I didn't love the art, I probably wouldn't get them. Alright, so that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what your tarot exceptions are and what your opinions are on the things I discussed. Do you like minimal decks? Do you like pip decks? Do you like collage decks? Let me know in the comments below and we can have a conversation. And if you guys have any tarot tags that you really, really want me to do that I haven't done, because again, I just like hardly do them, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I will catch you guys later.